Kyle Anthony now joins me in studio to see if the women's team can continue their winning ways to start the season.
Well, Chris, the Point Park women's basketball team comes home in their third win. The Pioneers scored 85 points against Crossroads League Mount Vernon Nazarene. The team traveled to Ohio on Saturday, the 9th, with two of their three returning starters out for the game. It gave way to others stepping up. Samantha Ware, the 6-foot freshman forward, shined as she filled in for injured guard Katrisa Savitsky. She scored a total of 19 points and had 11 rebounds. Other top scorers included freshman Selena DePietro with 14 points, Alexis Zanakis with 11, and Ashley Campbell with 10. The Pioneers started off the game by taking the lead with a score of 14-7 within the first 16 minutes. By the second half, the Cougars tied the score with 47 points. The Pioneers quickly took back the lead on the next possession with Ware driving down the court and scoring on a layup. Ware then seized an offensive rebound and scored again, forcing the Cougars to call a timeout. Pioneers continued to score in the second half and pulled ahead, leading with more than 10 points for the remainder of the game. The game ended with 2 baskets made by the Cougars, but they were able to come back and were able to win the game 85-70. Looking forward, the Pioneers women's basketball team has two home games coming up. Friday at 6, the Pioneers will take on Penn State Greater Allegheny, and Saturday at 2. These games will both take place at the Pioneers' home court at CCAC South.
Now, Kyle, one of the big things we're going to discuss here first is injuries. How big is it for the Pioneers to be losing Savitsky there? In addition, after losing Jania McFadden before the season even started.
I think it's a big thing because Katrisa Savitsky was supposed to come in and take a greater role, but the Jania McFadden loss is huge for this team. She was the team's leading rebounder and scorer coming back.
Now, with the injuries, the Pioneers have been able to get 3 straight wins there, Kyle. How big is that for them to start this season and get it off on the right foot?
It's a big thing for this team because they have a lot of new players, a lot of new starters stepping in, so they'll need to build a good amount of chemistry, and they'll need to take a more defensive focus.
Now, Kyle, you look at it, they finally get to play some home games because they haven't even really played at home. They had their first game at Penn State Greater Allegheny. How big is it for them to finally return to CCAC South?
That'll be a big thing for this team because this team seems to usually play a lot better at home. So them being able to do that, get a home game, a lot of players will step up. Hopefully Katrisa Savitsky comes back. I mean, Jania McFadden is listed day-to-day, so hopefully she'll make a nice home game return for this team.
Thanks, Kyle. The men's basketball team looks to rebound after losing TJ Hetherington last year. Phil Navatsyk now joins me to see how their first week of the season went.
Thanks, Chris. The Point Park men's basketball team finally started off their regular season schedule after weeks of practice and scrimmages. They played 1 home game, then took a trip down to Columbus, Ohio to play 3 games in their opening weekend. Their first game was like something out of the Twilight Zone, Chris. Remember all those shootouts last year? Well, that was not the case against Lourdes. The Pioneers dropped this one 65-54 in what will likely be one of the lowest scoring outputs we see all season. Lourdes came in with 3 games already under their belt, and they controlled the tempo from the start. They used tough defense and a time-consuming, patient offense to keep the Pioneers on their heels. Their second game, and first one in Columbus, was against number 6 Robert Morris. In a tough battle, the Pioneers put themselves in a good position to upset the Colonials. Their offense looked better than it did in Game 1, but unfortunately for Point Park, they just couldn't quite get over that hump and ended up losing this one 87-84. However, third time was a charm for the Pioneers when they blew out Ohio Christian University 97-62. Nick Brown had a monster game with 35 points and 10 boards, and Robbie Hetherington found his offensive groove by pouring in 21 of his own points. The fourth game ended in a victory for the Pioneers as well, although this one was much closer. Point Park managed to squeak out a victory against Trinity International 95-88. However, the biggest point of concern for the Pioneers right now is injury. They lost some key bench players in Josh Pulot and TJ Lanier, and the bench got even shorter when Robbie Hetherington hurt his ankle in that final game. The Pioneers wrapped up opening weekend with a 2-2 record, but as I said, Chris, depth is a real concern right now.
Now, Phil, there was a lot of transfers and now joined this team entering their first season. How big do you think it is for them to really fit in and be as productive as they have been through the beginning of this first week?
That's huge for them, Chris. We've talked about this before. Last season, we saw them really struggle to blend in with this team, and even guys like Gabe McNeil, who is someone that is a starter now, he's a leader on this team, even he struggled at the beginning of last season to blend in. So I think the transfers have definitely gotten comfortable here early in the season. I think Gabe McNeil and the senior leadership on this team has played a big role in that.
Now, Phil, you mentioned a few injuries that the Pioneers suffered during that road trip. Do you see that being any long-term issues for this team?
The good thing for the Pioneers, Chris, is that these injuries do appear to just be minor sprains, maybe take a couple games off and try to ice it, stretch it, and get back into playing shape. But the good thing for the Pioneers, Chris, as I said, is that these injuries don't appear to be long-term. No broken ankles, no level 3 sprains. So it seems like they might have actually dodged a bullet there, just getting these little ankle injuries.
Thanks, Phil. After the break, I'll have this week's National Sports Report, and Zach Aaron will be here to tell us about the new addition to the Point Park Athletics Department. You're watching the Pioneer Sideline here on UView.